Max Gorlin, Melbourne Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
This is Nat Fyfe from the Fremantle Footy Club.
Trent Cotchin from the Richmond Footy Club.
Scott Pendlebury from the Collingwood Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Patrick Cooch from the Carlton Footy Club.
It's Rory Sloane here from the Adelaide Crows.
This is Tom Mitchell from the Hawthorn Footy Club, and you're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Hey friends, you got MJ from the Coaches Panel. I hope you are well. The multi-bye rounds, thank goodness, they are in the rear vision mirror. It is now about moving forward in the final 9 weeks of your fantasy footy season. Yep, if you haven't done it already, move all those premium players that were on the bye back onto your ground. And hopefully, if you've been following the advice of Coaches Panel, and to be fair, just basic common sense, your team's better off now than what it was when you entered in 3 weeks ago. A monster episode, want to get through it all. Joining me on this podcast to get us there, I've got Benny Gogos. Hello, buddy. How you doing?
Great, thanks, mate. Good to be on again. It's very nice to be past those bye rounds, isn't it?
I don't think there's one person in fantasy footy that's gone, you know what, I'd really love to go back to that time of restricted options on field, less of my premium choices. There's not a fantasy player in the world that should be thinking about that way. Also back-to-back episodes. Now he's back on. I've got Jordox. Hello, mate. How are you?
Good, mate. Yes, good to be on again. And yeah, this is actually my favourite time of the fantasy season because the Monday after the buys, across the formats, you take all of your players from the bench, put them on the field, and you look, and then it's like, hey, my team's pretty good. I like the look of this team because for the last 3 weeks, we've been looking at our team with patches and holes and hoping this rookie can score more than 30. But now I've got, a lot of primos ready to go. Still a fair bit of work to do, though.
All right. Well, we're going to help coaches that find themselves in that position. Of course, a massive shout out to a couple of brand new Patreons that have joined our supporter group. All the links for that, by the way, coachespanel.tv, where you can get exclusive access, podcasts, content, articles, group chats, and a bunch of other things. Links for that at coachespanel.tv. Big thanks to Saw Guerrera and also John Bollen. We appreciate you, lads, and the support of the Coaches Panel in 2021. All right. Why don't we start, rather than looking at the clubs that have come off the buys, and we'll look at some players like that. And there are some obvious, probably 3 big names that across all the formats coaches want us to dive into. But let's specifically, just for the moment, lean ourselves to probably more a limited trade format of the game. So your SuperCoach and DreamTeam. I think it's still going to help AFL fantasy coaches, but it's probably more leaning towards that format simply because limited trades, once they're gone, they're gone. And so, Ben, maybe I'll get you to get your take on this as we kind of open up this conversation. With trades running out, some coaches have anywhere from 4 to 8. There may be a few coaches that are in a luxury position of more than that, depending on how good their squad is, how lucky they've been, and a bunch of other factors. How many trades with 9 weeks to go should we be banking for the inevitable long-term injuries or restings, or we're going to put them away in cotton wool for the brand new season? What's the approach a coach should be considering, especially, I'll put it in the caveat of they're going for an overall rankings. Different, I know, if it's league, but if they're going for an overall ranking, because Jordox, I want to get your take on leagues in a sec on this. What should an overall rankings focus coach do?
Yeah, unfortunately, a bit of the answer is how long is a piece of string, MJ? Because there's all different answers to this. Now, my feel is that you don't want to have any less than 4 to 5 LTI trades. I feel 4 is very, very tight. 5 is, I feel a little bit more comfortable about that. 6 is terrific. And I think through the bye rounds, we got challenged, obviously, with that. The Richmond and West Coast fixtures changing, I think that changed a lot of plans, even though we got a couple of extra trades.
Yeah.
I think a lot of teams right now are sitting on that 6-5-4 trades to go. So I think 5 is probably that golden number. Mm-hmm. I know teams right now are looking at, they might have someone like a CJ on their field. They might have a Harms on their field with Viney coming back in. And they're trying to work out, okay, I might be able to get another 20 points if I go up to a Whitfield, for example. Might be able to get another 30 points. And I think one of the things that we should definitely work through today is whether that's a viable strategy or whether it's better to sit and hold and try and save some points on the run home when we all know donuts become the recipe for many fantasy coaches.
Now, what is the role of a coach's bench play in that discussion? Is that an important factor for a coach to consider as well about whether or not using a Giath or an Harms? Let's stay with those two options. Yeah. At the moment, your team feels quote unquote complete with them. You've got premiums or versions that feel close to it. That's what we're talking about, this handful of trades left. When does the bench options you have start to dictate whether you should go hard and make that move versus conserve and wait?
Yeah, it's another fascinating one. So I think with rookies and CJ and Harms and all the different players you have on your bench, it's really important that if you've got great depth, okay, maybe you can go a little bit harder into cutting through those LTI trades. So maybe you're sitting on a CJ at D7. Maybe you're sitting on a Phillips at F7. That's going to be quite common. Then it feels a little bit more comfortable to maybe go to that 4 LTIs, which is sort of my minimum trades for now to the end of the season. I know a lot of teams are struggling to even have quality depth because we have seen there's been quite a few difficulties with cash generation through periods of the season and the rookies and the timing and all that. So I think, if you've got great depth, it's a pretty obvious one, MJ. If you've got great depth, you can go a little bit shorter into it. But the reality is, again, this is, if I had a crystal ball, it would help a whole heap right now because...
Would it ever?
I know, because the reality is there's been seasons past where I've held on to trades and it's been the wrong call because we haven't seen very many injuries.
Yeah.
And in seasons past, I've also gone really hard and I've got a glut of injuries towards the end of the season, like a lot of coaches have. And suddenly I'm dealing with 1 or 2 donuts, for the last sort of 3 weeks of the season. And that can be 200 points a week for the last 3 weeks of the season. So that's where, I think there has to be a question of, okay, if I'm going to gain another 20 to 30 points each week, will I be able to catch this up by conserving a little bit now in the potential inevitability of, early injuries and all that type of stuff and early, surgeries and getting everyone right for the 2022 season. So, all in all, you want to have good bench depth, but that's what it is.
So what defines good bench depth? Because some could define that as, I've got Harry Jones, who popped a good 1 score last week. I've got great bench depth. Is he that? Or is it a Caleb Poulter? Or is it as a name you've already alluded to there, a Tom Phillips, or some might not have him anymore, but a Jordan De Goey, who still does present value as far as I'm concerned once he gets back off suspension. What's good bench depth? A pulse, a guy that's shown he can score, or a premium that's not had a great year yet at this point?
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested in your thoughts, but for me, it's mature age players.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like a guy like Caleb Poulter, okay, he's come halfway through the season. He's obviously done terrifically well, but he came off a season last year where I don't think he played. Obviously, wasn't playing senior footy. He's getting built into the infrastructure. Collingwood's going through a tough season. There's going to be games where they don't get a whole heap of the ball. Can you really depend on that guy when, say, potentially a Dustin Martin has a week off towards the end of the season? And you're really needing at that point in time, you're really needing to get an 80 and 90 score. Can you depend on a Poulter? Obviously, the inverse of that is Phillips hasn't been doing too well, but I have a lot more confidence in my premiums actually turning it around than my rookies producing for me on a week-to-week basis. And I have a lot of confidence in the second half of the season that a guy like Tom Phillips actually does grow a little bit.
Yeah.
So I tend to think that players that have done much worse than expected turn it around typically, while rookies are never to be depended on entirely.
Yeah, I think that's a fair call, man. I'm kind of with you. I don't think you can count a cow as safe coverage at any point in time, almost regardless of who they are. They're not safe coverage. You want to build strong, solid depth. Now, you might not be in that position. Trades might have been, and injuries might have been cruel to you that you just have to settle for the likes of a Newcomb, of the likes of a Callum Coleman-Jones, these sort of guys, and go, you're my cover and I'm going to hold and hope. Okay, that's the uniquenesses that can come to this side. We're more talking about that ideal variables that you let these guys that have been underperforming, that you've built around the problem, or you're taking them at low value and hoping they can pop for you and put some pressure on your F6 or on your M8 or on your D6 or whatever it is. That's the ideal scenario that we're kind of alluding, which is where the Harms or this, Whitfield, Harms. Okay, what do I actually do? That's the kind of scenarios that we're talking from a rankings perspective. Jordox, for you, leagues has certainly been the place that you've had your greatest focus on in a period of time. Where does that change? Ben's talking about strategy and structure and process for rankings. If you're going after leagues, what's that number? Is there a magic number that you're chasing for of LTI-based injuries?
Yeah, I don't think there's a magic number. It's more dependent on your side and how you're looking in terms of a completed side or not. So I think rule of thumb is most upgrades are 2 trades. So if you've still got 3 upgrades that you want to make, you'd want to have at least 6. And then, in a perfect world, you want to have 4 for finals. So yeah. Look, it'll depend on many things. One thing I will offer though, particularly I've noticed this year, looking at the run home, in the buys amongst the trading that we've done, there's been a few who have looked at a Jai Newcomb, for example, and thought after his debut, okay, I can ride him at M8 and I'm going to move a Tom Phillips on. And what obviously we saw last week, and I think I spoke about Bianco from the Pies on last week's podcast as well, was he was someone I thought, oh, Eureka, I'll pop him at D6 or M8. He can just sit there and then I'm going to move Markov on or a Tom Phillips, or what I think the best strategy from here in this season. And I think, the interrupted year that the juniors all sort of had last year with COVID, particularly the Victorian players, is they're just not lasting. And I don't think there's a kid that can be relied on field. So my advice would be, in both overall and head-to-head, would be get the kids off the field before you upgrade your Phillips and your Harms. And
yeah, man, I'm 100% with you. And I think you're right. I think if leagues are your focus, you're holding on those 4 trades. That's a nice sort of number. And then it depends on where's your positioning in that league. Who are you playing against? Is this a must win? Do you have the opportunity to go, okay, if this is a qualifying final, have I got this guy or girl covered? And if I do, maybe I can run the gauntlet of doing a double trade in the final 2 rounds of the year. And all of a sudden you're in this great luxury position where I can completely get rid of my M10 now and just get rid of every bit of cash off the bench off there because I just don't need it. So that's where the strategy starts to come in too.
And if you're in a final and I'll paint a scenario for you. So say you finish top 4 in your league and you're in a qualifier and you have a player, a primo, who's got a 2-week suspension.
Yeah.
If the kid replacing him has a good matchup, you could run the risk, and if you get the win, you skip the semi, you're through to the prelim.
Totally.
Holding that trade for the final 2 weeks. So they're the sorts of things you think about when you're in league. But to have 4 for finals, I think this year you'd be very, very happy. It's been a tough one.
You'd be pretty happy with that.
Dropped a lot.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. It kind of brings me to the next thought of as we do get to both for overall and for league focused coaches, and certainly most of the coaches panel community, rankings is the focus and leagues is enjoyable and fun and great. Maybe it's a cash league, but getting the greatest ranking focus you can is kind of there. Who are some guys, if you are trying to finish your team, maybe not so much on a budget, but you can't get up to the big dogs that you really would like to get to a completed team. So you might be going, I want a Callum Mills, or I want a Jack McRae. I want a Dane Zorko. These are just 3 random names I've picked. But if I spend up big on these blokes, I'll either in DreamTeam and SuperCoach not have a completed side and be stuck with these quasi options or a Biancos and Newcombs and Poulters on field. Or in AFL Fantasy, you'll be getting to a, quote, complete team by round 21 or 22, which is way too late, even in that format to be doing it. So who are some guys that present, and Ben, I'll go to you first. Who are some guys that present value for us across the lines that we could maybe go and look to? Because the buys are done. So it's not about, okay, here are the 8 teams coming off the buys. Let's look at these 8 teams. Like some of the past podcasts we've done. We don't care about the buys. It's now 9 weeks. Everybody's available. All in, go. Who are some guys that for you, Ben, maybe format specific or more generic that you go, there's value there. I like what he's doing. Are there any players that are jumping out for you, man?
Yeah, mate. I've got 3 for you. I've question without notice, but I've done some quick research.
Well done.
So one of the guys who I think was a clear option last week and is another clear option this week is Dan Houston in the defensive line. So he's gone at about 85 average for the season. He had a bigger season last year, but he's sort of been playing a little bit through the midfield, a little bit off halfback. He had a lower scoring game against Carlton, which sort of
injury impacted.
Is an injured game, and that free fall is average. But for the first 4 rounds, he's averaging around 97.
Yeah.
Obviously, Port Adelaide's going all in for this season, so he's going to be playing every game. He's a really good option, and you can buy him right now for 567,000. Last week he was 533, so that was the ideal timing.
Yeah.
But he's still got some good matchups. I think Hawthorn in a couple of weeks, Sydney this round. I don't mind them. Collingwood round 19. But
nice.
Next on the list was Travis Boak. So another guy that we spoke about actually a little bit last week. He's been very, very good when he's received a little bit of a tag over the last sort of week or two, but he's really demonstrated that he's fighting through it well. Yep. Another guy that Port Adelaide is very much reliant on. So he needs to perform in order for them to do well. Now, he only gained 5,000 on his price tag, but, he's already shown for a number of years how good he can be. And I tend to think he's the one that, out of this list I'm going to give you, MJ, he's the one that I feel most confident about. I just think he's a guy that a little bit like a Joel Selwood from seasons past when he was more in his pomp, or he's a guy I think that's going to hit his run home in the second half of the season. Some of the veterans have a really good skill set of being able to produce their best football on the run home. And I think Travis Boak's going to prove to be one of them. But the final one who's dropped down significantly over the last few weeks has actually been Jarman Impey.
I like him.
So Impey right now is costing in Dream Team at a 533,000, which is a significant cut from what he has been doing. So 536,000. So he's a forward. He's averaging 86 this season. He's at quite a last sort of 3 or 5 weeks, but he's sort of shown that, and along with a number of halfbacks this year, he's shown a great propensity to be able to score. And look, in that forward line where we've really struggled for, both continuity and also scoring. We spoke about this at length last week, just the number of injuries going through there, as well as the scoring not being so great. He's an option that I personally love, MJ. I think at 536K, obviously this has been a breakout season for him, but Hawthorn's heavily dependent on him driving out of halfback along with Jack Scrimshaw. So I think he's a great option at the price, and you're probably never going to be able to buy him cheaper than his price right now. He's coming off a big week against Essendon. He's not an ideal matchup with GWS next to come, but out of those bargain bin basement offers, mate, he's the one I like.
Yeah, I really like him. And certainly in SuperCoach, he was a key reason a lot of people started really well in that forward line along with Zeeble. And even some of the questions I'm seeing from Patreons is, should we move him on? And my answer is no. He's as likely as almost any other forward you're considering to move in to deliver a 90-plus score for you from now to the end of the year. Danger might be the only exception that you might want to argue me on, and that's fine. Zorko might be another one. That's fine. But you're not paying the same amount.
It's a 200K difference to Zorko. The Dangerfield is another huge difference. That's about 100,000. So when we really are talking these final upgrades, we've got to be looking at what's it going to offer us. Maybe an Impey allows you to go Harms to Whitfield.
Yeah, good call.
So we've always got to be looking at these in sets, not just individual. Yes, I do believe Dangerfield's going to score more than Jarman Impey.
Sure.
I think think a lot of people are on that same boat. Yes, I believe Zorko is going to score a lot more than Impey, but what does it allow you to do with the other move? That's always going to be at the forefront of your thinking.
Yeah, no, it's a good shout, man. What about for you, Jordox? Are there any players that you're looking at them off the buy at the moment going, or that are just value right now that you're like, yeah, that's a nice rounding out of my side?
There's a few, hey, and there are bargains to be had this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
I like the strategy of sometimes you go spend up on a big dog, and then the next time you upgrade, you look at a bit of value. So here's a few. I mean, this one's going to be, and I look at fantasy as well, just to have a bit of difference to the Dream Team guys. I mean, they're pretty similar, but Scott Pendlebury is going to be a popular one this week in fantasy as a forward.
Yep.
I was actually a little surprised by his numbers. They were a lot better than I thought. He'd only really had 2 shocking games, really. And that was, we found out later, he had an injury to his finger, I think it was.
Yeah, injury and roll.
Injury. Yeah. Yep. Now, I like midfielders for value because the difference between the best midfielders and the cheaper midfielders, I think, is smaller in points.
Yep.
But for the forwards and defenders, the price is much bigger. So in the midfield for fantasy, there's a guy that I can't even believe I'm thinking about it, but Andrew Gaff is having a really weird year. And I think the problem that Gaff has had is he hasn't had his mates playing with him.
Mm-hmm.
So Tim Kelly, Luke Shuey, Yo has only just recently got back. So Gaff's kind of been the senior guy, and he's been forced to play more inside than what he prefers. And I just think he's got, I think, 5 of the last 9 games at Optus Stadium.
Nice.
You might want to stay away from him this week. He's got a high break even and he's playing the Dogs, so it will be a tough game. But once those guys come in, like Shuey and Kelly and the like, Gaff can go back to the outside, have the experienced guys digging it out and then getting it to him on the outside. And we know he loves running up and down the expanses of Optus Stadium. In terms of price, I think he's just a touch over 700. But I think his break-even was pretty high, around a 130. So I think you could get him for under 700. And if he can come home like a steam train, that would be pretty good, I reckon. And the other one in the midfield, sorry, did you have
No. I think that's really good. And some might look at his year and go, oh, but it hasn't been a great year. Exactly right. You haven't missed those great scores. Look at that history of what in Dream Team and Fantasy is certainly the preferred spot to get him. Because in SuperCoach, you've got a Scott Pendlebury who you alluded to there. He's at 424,000. Like, don't overthink it. If you can't get up to a Neil in a week or two, and I'm not a fan of trading in Lockie Neal this week. He's getting Mark O'Connor, and he's as equally restricting and damaging right now as what De Boer is to our premiums. So while Neil's value this week, you can wait another week. Nothing worse than trading a premium and getting a 70 or 80. Pendles is the next easy guy. Pendles in SuperCoach and AFL Fantasy is the Toby Green, the Lockie Hunter, and who was it? The obvious one, Josh Kelly the week before. It's and Nick Haynes. They're of course, they're the likely picks to go. Gaff for me is perfect. It's a bang on call, man. He's a 110 guy.
And with Gaff as well, just having a look. So Shuey's played 1 game this year, and that was round 3. That round up against Port Adelaide, Gaff put out 154.
Nice.
Which is tasty. Now, the other one's Brad Crouch, who has struggled to, I think most of St Kilda have struggled. They've had a real awful year, really, compared to expectations. And Brad Crouch has come in and, he's struggled, but he's really found his form before leading into the buys, and he's still cheap enough. And he's a guy that can really put a good score out there, even when the side's not playing well. He just knows how to find it. So, I've just seen a bit of the old Adelaide Brad Crouch of late, and I think you could get him for around 740 as well. So some unique names. Pendlebury will be quite popular. Gaff and Crouch, I think, could be the unique types that you could try and use to get an advantage on the run home.
Yeah, nice. There's a bunch of them. There's an article dropping Thursday from me at coachespanel.tv. If you want to see who I think are some great options that are coming off the buy round, there's a bunch of them there. So depending on the time you're listening to this episode, it's either soon to come or it'll be there. So you can go and check that bad boy out at coachespanel.tv. Ben.
I've got one more for you, MJ. I've been scanning, and this one's a much more of a differential type pick, but someone I'm really interested in, and he'd be super unique right now, is Zach Bailey.
Oh, yes. Nice.
So he's a mid forward, and he's averaging the princely average of 72 this season. So nothing to get too excited about. But look, he's coming off a couple of games where he's gotten high 90s in DreamTeam. So that's a 92 back-to-back 99s actually against Melbourne and the Roos.
Yep.
A break even of 31. Now he does have Geelong this week, but afterwards it gets very tasty for him. So he's got Adelaide, Saints, Richmond, Hawthorn, Gold Coast, Fremantle, Collingwood, West Coast. It's a dream run.
Oh, it's the list of the bottom 10 AFL teams right there.
And he owes Geelong. He will be very keen on tomorrow night, if we all recall round 2 when he was robbed of that free kick. Anyway, I digress.
And he's a very, very good player. I can see Zach Bailey being a potential star of the competition. Is a little bit too strong, but he's not far off it.
Yeah.
He is very, very damaging as a footballer. I think that there will be games where Brisbane might look to sort of play him through the midfield as well, especially if we're looking at games where they're potentially going to be quite dominant. I think they might throw him around. He has the capacity to play midfield, of course. He's been predominantly a forward so far this year, and he's done it exceptionally well. He's had a few games where he's kicked 4 goals, kicked 3 goals. So he's just another one I'd like to throw up there as we sort of head into the last couple of months of the season. It's never a bad idea to have a guy that might be a little bit unique for the run home. Yep. We're always looking for that. I bang on about Kane every week, but Kane, demonstrates it so well. We're always looking for the next Sam Walsh. We're always looking for the next breakout contender. And Zach Bailey is one that flashes to me as being that type of guy for us. So we're not going to get him cheaper. Risk it for the biscuit.
I like that. One for me, if you want just an out-of-the-box one, defensive option, Shannon Hearn. There's a reason he's cheap, but I want to flag him for you. In a SuperCoach, 453,400, and he's coming in with a 2% ownership. In DreamTeam, 581,200 with a 2% ownership. In AFL Fantasy, 2% ownership and just over 600K. So unique. Here's what you need to know. He's had one bad score. What was that? An injury impacted round 6 score. And it's always dangerous to remove injury impacts out of it, but it's to look at it beyond that. Here's the thing. If you take that injury impacted score out, and it was in the opening minutes, so I'm prepared to do it. Normally I'm like, he got injured at quarter time, suck it up. But when it's in those first handful of minutes of the game, a little bit different for me. Here's what he would be averaging in SuperCoach, 106. He's priced, remember what I told you, in SuperCoach, he's priced for you at 453,000. In AFL Fantasy and DreamTeam, he would have been averaging a flat ton if you take that injury impacted game. What is he in AFL Fantasy? 600,000. You make money by trading Isaac Cumming to him. I wouldn't trade Isaac Cumming, but I'm telling you, you'd make money to Isaac Cumming. In DreamTeam, he's 581,000. That is, if you're not happy with a Sam Doherty, I wouldn't make this trade. I'm just telling you the value. You make 100K via Sam Doherty. I would never do that trade. I'm just trying to highlight to you how freaking cheap he is. And he scores every week when he's not injured. So he's my guy. Which brings me to the next question.
MJ, that's a great one, by the way. That's that's fantastic. And look, right now, Sam Doherty has a little bit of pressure on him. I know we're having a bit of fun with the name, but he has not been great for a little bit of time. Coach is looking for the extra 100K. I'm not ruling anything out, mate.
It's all on the table for Ben. I love it. I love it. Why not? Have a go.
I mean, Shannon Hearn has been fantastic. West Coast is going to launch another finals campaign. there's worse ways to make $100,000, and this is the time of year when we have to get very creative. So I can see a hell of a lot worse moves than that one.
All right, and as Jordox said, 5 out of the next 9 made are at home. He goes okay at that. If you want to go and look at the stats,
the only flag with Shannon Hearn, and I've got to be careful how I put this because I'm pretty sure he was born the same year I was.
You calling yourself old,
mate? He's getting a little long in the tooth, but no, look, in all seriousness, towards the back end as we approach finals, they've got Alex Willardon, who I don't even think gets back in straight away. They're going to want to get him in, and I'd be careful. Look, I'd be careful moving a Sam Doherty on. I just think that's got the potential to explode. But take your point, you make the cash. I just think here's a controversial one. I'd move Jaden Short on before I move Sam Doherty on.
There you go. I love how we've somehow got to this place where guys that are averaging 90 over the year, we're like, yeah, get rid of him. He's done. That tells you.
Mate, that sums up the back line in fantasy sides of 2021. It's been a gold mine.
Yeah, no, it's been the line that has consistently delivered for us. And chances are if you started with a premium option through there, they've been that for you through the vast majority of the year. It has definitely been what's felt the most stable of our lines, especially in contrast to the injuries our forward lines have got. We've mentioned this player's name already, but there feels like there's, in fact, 2 of these 3 guys. It feels like this week there's 3 big names that coaches are talking about. Pendlebury, I don't think is one of them. I think AFL Fantasy, maybe his value's up because he's forward eligible. He's under 600,000. And the assumption, rightly or wrongly, is that he now will be midfield under Robert Harvey. That's the narrative. But there's 3 guys I think are getting more love across the formats that I'm keen on your lads' take. One is a confirmed return from injury of Brodie Grundy. According to the club, he would have been right and ready to go if they weren't even on the bye last week. So he's playing. That's already been confirmed from the club. So if you've held him in Dream Team and SuperCoach, happy days. Well done. You've just gained a premium onto your side. If you held him in AFL Fantasy, what the heck were you doing? Why would you hold a premium like that for 3 weeks in that format with that many trades? I don't get it, but bless you if you did that. You can move him onto your field. He's one. Lachie Neale, he was awesome last weekend. Was awesome and really has hit what many believe to be bottom out price. Looked good, looked like 2020. Want to get your lads' thoughts on him. And then the third is, please, Patrick Dangerfield, come and save our forward lines. You were meant to do it at the start of the year. You have played very infrequently for a variety of different reasons in 2021. Now, please, with a nice run, no Mitch Duncan, play him in the midfield, not through the forward line. Please, Scotty, please. Where do you lads sit? We can't get all 3 of them this week. Chances are we probably want 2 of the 3, if not all 3, ideally in our round 23 side. Benny, what's the priority for a coach? I know it's unique to each side, but who are those 3, Benny, should we be targeting and focusing on first?
So again, Pendles, Neale, and Danger, were those the 3 names?
It was Grundy, Neale, and Danger. Okay. You can absolutely throw Pendles into that mix if you'd like. I was more flagging. I think fantasy is where he's getting the most love because of the forward status. His value in the others, absolutely. But I think they're the big 3 names people are considering and looking at this week.
Across the 3 formats, they're the formats, 3 that are highly relevant for all.
So what do we do, Ben?
So let's do snap judgments. Danger, not really exciting me. Neale, not exciting me at all this week. Grundy, you can wait. I don't really like all 3 of them. So Danger, I think, yes, I get the narrative around, okay, Geelong kind of need another midfielder to come in. But the worst situation that could occur for Danger right now is another injury.
True.
And they're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that doesn't happen, because that could be a calamity for the Cats season. If he sort of has a quieter game now and then till the end of the season, that is not a disaster for Geelong. No. As long as he's got continuity. So I think he's going to play his 50% forward. He doesn't have the fitness. He just hasn't played many games of football this year, MJ. So yeah. I'm not super excited about him. I do think he's going to be one of the top 6 forwards to here to the end of the season.
Agree.
But you're paying, a reasonable price for him. He doesn't knock the socks off me. Lachie Neale does knock the socks off me, not this week.
And why this week? Now, we know we've talked and alluded to it, but let's be really, really clear, because some people could take you out of a context and go, Ben said don't get Lachie Neale, and you're only saying wait 7 days.
100%. Well, it all comes down to, I think, the number 42 at Geelong, Mark O'Connor. So he's been tagging incredibly well this season. And we've got to factor in a couple of things with tags and with upgrades. Now, Lachie Neale has been found to be taggable this season. We've got evidence of it.
Even last year, Ryan Clark got him once.
He's always been quite taggable. Yeah,
strong evidence of it this season. So he's got a break even of 118 in DreamTeam. Now he's dropped down to 711K. So he's dropped considerably from his starting price. But I just think we can wait one more week, and it comes down to points again, MJ. So if we can find something that can maybe be an upgrade on a different line, or maybe create money somewhere else, and understand that, the potential is there for Neale to potentially have an 80 type score. That is well within the realms of possibility.
Absolutely.
And if that happens, then, we can miss that score, grab him next week for a cheaper price, a discounted price. And we were just speaking about that Brisbane run, MJ. It applies to Lachie Neale as well. It is incredible. So I think the timing on round 16 for Lachie Neale could not be better, personally.
Yeah, that Brisbane fixture, in case you're going, what are you talking about? What are you alluding to? Let me just walk you through the upcoming fixture that Brisbane have after Thursday night's game against Geelong. Adelaide, one of the easiest midfields to score against, and their best defensive stopper is Ben Keys. He's not a tagger. St Kilda, look at what Adelaide did to them before the bye. Rory Laird destroyed him through the midfield. And this is no knock on Laird. He can't hold a candle to Lachie Neale. That's just how good Lachie Neale is in contrast. Richmond, one of the easiest midfielders to score against. They will let him have 56 irrelevant footy touches. They don't care. Hawthorn. Okay, maybe Warple tries to tag him. Maybe, but is he even in the Hawks' best 22 anymore? Like, you can build a narrative that he might not even be there. Gold Coast, incredibly easy to score against. Then it's Fremantle, Collingwood, and West Coast to wrap up the year. As a inside midfielder, Ben, you're right. And for so many midfielders at Brisbane, it's an incredible run. I think that's a really good shout from you on both those guys. Go, Jordox.
Just an alternate view on Neale, because the thing is, right, you might be wanting Neale, wanting Danger, and wanting Grundy, right? And they're the three. All of them, there's strong arguments that this isn't the week. But the trouble is, if we wait till next week, we can't get all three. And, geez, you'd have to double downgrade this week to get both next week. If you have to pick one to do it this week, I don't mind Neale. If you want Neale, because of that run you just spoke about, if we go back to that round 2 game, which was a cracking game against Geelong, Neale was carrying a neck or a back injury that he'd sort of got from, back injury that he got from the round before. And Mark O'Connor went to him and did an incredible job. Now, no one, to my knowledge, saw that coming. No one saw O'Connor being thrown into the guts.
Nope.
That was his first game. In round 1, he didn't tag against Adelaide. So round 2, he jumps on Neale, who's a bit proppy and a bit sore. I'm pretty confident tomorrow night, whenever you're listening to this round, Thursday night, that Neale will score a ton. And I say that because they have had a long time to prepare for the O'Connor tag.
Yep.
They are a very good outfit, Brisbane, and I think they'll be ready for it. So my point is, if you need to grab one of Dangerfield or Neale, and you're committed and you really want both of them, and you had to pick one, I'd be saying go Neale. I think he's going to have a good game. I don't think he's going to go nuts, but I'm predicting a low ton.
And I think if that's the case, if that's the angle, then he's the option for you. If that's the narrative and that's the belief, the beauty of this game is time reveals whether it's right or wrong. And it's all about what's the logic, what's the reasoning, what's within the realms of possibilities, and go for it. I don't have that same confidence, but you do. And you've mapped out your why. Awesome.
Yeah.
Then you
the
bank it.
concern for me with Neil this week, and I completely get the angle that Jordox is coming from. I think it's very well reasoned as well. But my concern with Lockie Neil is that the world in which Neil scores a 50 this week is much more likely because of the tag coming. If we were going into the game and we're thinking, I don't think there's a likely tag, I would be highly confident that we're going to get an 80 plus from Neil. But I can see a disastrous score occurring, or the chances of a disastrous score occurring are certainly exacerbated. And he's been one that has been shown to really struggle with the tag. So I don't think. Sorry, go for it, mate.
Yeah, well, I think if you're thinking that way and you're worried that he could be tagged to a 60 or 70, I don't think you get him.
Yeah,
I don't think you get him because there's going to be tags that come ahead. You looked at the fixture, there's not a lot of taggers ahead. But if I'm getting Neil, it's because I believe he's back to Brownlow form.
Exactly.
Not necessarily as elite as last year, but he's going to start shrugging off these taggers. If you're worried he's going to get tagged to a 60, I just won't touch him for the rest of the year.
I think that the draw is too good for me. The draw is too good. Look, Zach Merritt can get tagged to a 60. It doesn't make me scared because we've seen with Lockie Neal's ceiling he can do
everywhere else. Yeah.
So I'd be finding cash for Jared Lyons.
In any format? I'd pick Neil over for after this week. If it's a pure line them up side by side across the formats, I'm on Neil because it's not just Neil and Lions. It's Neil and Cash
with the cash
plus Lions. So it's Neil and Whitfield.
I don't want to be going into the back end of the year worried that Neil's going to cop a tag from someone. But anyway, look, I think everyone's going to have their thoughts on that.
Of course.
Dangerfield's really interesting, isn't he? Because I think at halftime last week when I was watching him against the Bulldogs, so, challenging matchup in itself, I actually got the feeling, and I think, Benny, you're probably still there, that, he might be one for the last few rounds of the year, not now. But what I found interesting was that second half, when the game was on the line, I saw Dangerfield really give his all. I think he scored 55 points in the second half. Not sure exactly what his role was. And I agree, they're going to want to play him forward a bit. But, geez, the way Hawkins and Jeremy Cameron and Rowan are combining.
Not bad.
And now with Mitch Duncan out, I reckon, I don't know. I've got a feeling Danger will come good as well. So, I think you're going to want to have him at some point.
Break even 135 in Dream Team this week, coming up against a really good team in Brisbane. This isn't the week for him.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
And I think there's a ton of really good coaches that have the opposite opinion to me right now and are going early on Danger, because the thinking as well always is in it, and it's probably something I don't talk about enough, but points over dollars always does apply. 100%.
Totally.
But the question is, who can we bring in this week? And if it is your final upgrade, maybe you're willing to say, okay, I'm going to forego the 10, 20,000 and get those extra points on the field. Fair enough too. I think a lot of coaches still aren't in that situation. They're still struggling at maybe their D6, or they've got a Phillips at F6, or whatever the case might be. Yeah. And I think those options that we were speaking about 20 minutes ago, those value picks are probably more desirable this week. And I think Brodie Grundy, who was the other guy we brought up, I think this is a reasonably good week for him. He's
against
something that So I'm not super excited about Brodie Grundy, but out of the three of them, with a break even of 100, having had like a good rest, probably a mini preseason with his sort of week of being, fairly healthy and physically in a good place. I think he's coming up against Fremantle. He's the elite scorer out of the three of them. Like he always just has been able to produce 110 plus.
Yeah. Captain option.
In Dream Team. My only question with Brodie Grundy is, who are you moving to Brodie Grundy?
That's the key.
Yeah, that's the key. So Nick Natanui, MJ. dominant the last 3, 4, 5 weeks.
Mm.
You're not moving Nick Nat on, mate.
Not if you picked him, no.
Nope. Riley O'Brien, been very, very solid for you.
Been fine. You're holding on.
100%, mate. He was one that we spoke about maybe a month back. And I said, if you were getting 100 average out of Riley O'Brien, that was a game-changing move for you.
Yeah.
And that's basically what's played out. I think he might have done mid-90s or whatever the case might be. So I don't think that that's a play. It's a 15-point upgrade. That's not a large enough upgrade.
And he's playing Carlton and this week, O'Brien. The matchups there.
100%. You've nailed it, Ben. The Grundy call is the more complicated one because, as you said, it depends who you've got there. When we talk about Dangerfield, when we talk about Neil, like a lot of people are looking at moving a Tom Phillips into a Dangerfield or maybe a fattened cow and a Dev Robertson to a Neil. I'm not thinking there's many people who have cash and have Flynn at R2 to go Flynn to Grundy. It's people with Riley O'Brien, Sean Darcy.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a lot more complicated. I think an interesting thought on it, right, is particularly probably for fantasy because the majority of people would have moved him on when he went down a few weeks ago. The question is now, do I move my R2 into Grundy? And it kind of depends, well, did you have Grundy a few weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
Because those that didn't have to sacrifice that trade and did something else with their team. So now they're in a position where, maybe I'm in a better position because I never had Grundy and I did something else the week that everyone else moved in as a sideways or a cash grab to an O'Brien or Darcy. Mm-hmm. So I think that really plays into it. I think if you've got O'Brien and Darcy, look, particularly O'Brien, I think the cash that he's going to still make in the next few weeks, the gap between him and Grundy price-wise, you're going to end up making a profit if you did do that trade out when Grundy went down.
I think if we focus on AFL fantasy, as you bring that one up this week with Brodie Grundy, he's 798,000. He's got not a hugely challenging matchup. That's no disrespect to Sean Darcy, but and as good as he's been brilliant. He does not move around the ground like Brodie Grundy does. He will create a contest at stoppage. Sure, he absolutely will do that. He'll thump and crash. There's the good parts of Mumford in Sean Darcy as a ruckman, but his break even's 141. You've then got in the forward line 3 guys in AFL fantasy that present huge, unique value still for you. Toby Green, we talked about him a lot last week. He was pretty good. Lockie Hunter, against arguably one of the most difficult midfield matchups to get, still turned up. He's still value in AFL fantasy. He's only 662,000. Oh, and then who else have we got? Scott Pendlebury, who after a hand injury and some weird movements from Buckley to protect his hand, has been thrown back into the midfield over the past fortnight and is 592,000 and has a break even of 76. I'm telling you this, no matter who or how you're getting there, you would run your Tracy, you would run your Flynn's, you would run your Amity, who's at 261,000. You would run your Reeves and bring in Pendles or Hunter or Green every day of the week for me over Grundy. You can wait that one extra week just because of that break even, just because of the value you get, and all of them have relatively nice matchups. I can see Hunter and Gaff shaking hands at the start of the game and not seeing each other till the very end of the game on the same wing. And both teams will be happy with that. Green has proven to be still one of the most damaging options inside forward 50 and still getting centre bounce opportunities. And Pendles, unless he gets played in the forward pocket, he's a 90 guy because he just gets the ball and his young team need him. So for me, in that fantasy version, those are the 3 guys, let alone looking at the other options and other lines that I mentioned. Shannon Hearn. For me, Grundy's a wait-a-week guy. almost regardless of who you got.
Pendlebury.
He is, and sorry, you go, Ben.
No, I was just going to say Pendlebury's too good a value. $590K, that is absurd. There was a very good reason why he was playing forward, and it wasn't because Scott Pendlebury is going to be the next forward for the Collingwood Football Club. He was injured as there was something clearly wrong. We've watched Pendlebury for the last 10 years basically be consistent day in, day out, and then suddenly he was getting about 10 or 15 touches and he didn't look like he wanted to get it. Something was up, mate. Something was up. He's been back to being in very good form. He's a terrific footballer. He's almost a timeless, ageless footballer. There's so many good things to say about him. I can see him even going to half back and being dominant there.
Yeah. Just set up the play. Yeah.
Yeah. I honestly think from now to the end of the season, 90 absolute minimum. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing a lot more than that. So he's a great one.
Yeah.
On just going back to Grundy quickly,
sure.
I think this week is going to be the week if players who in fantasy who got rid of Grundy a few weeks ago for Sean Darcy, this is the week where they're going to show that they that was the move, that was the right call, because now, you're right about all those, value guys, but you can now turn one of your forwards into Grundy and push Sean Darcy into your forward line. Now, the last thing on Grundy I'll add is,
sure.
You're right. He's not, well, he might reach his break even, but in all probability he won't. So you will get him at least a smidge cheaper next week. Grundy is this figure for me that I remember earlier in the season, starting with the rookie R2. I just think if you've got an opportunity to get Grundy, you could wait a week, but other things could come up, and you may be looking in the rearview mirror at Grundy and his captain scores for the rest of the year thinking, that was the week I should have just paid up. Sometimes you just pay up. So if you can, and you don't have much else going on, and you're just going to be spewing if you don't, I'd grab him.
I think it comes down to, because it's a fair shout. I think it does come down to what, Ben said right at the top. It's how are you getting there? And what are you needing to do to make it? That ultimately is the key piece of the puzzle. Because you're right, all three of these guys, the Neil, the Grundy, and the Dangerfield, in an ideal world, we're heading into the final month of the year with these guys in our teams. That's the ideal world coaches want to be across formats. Now, life isn't about ideals. You're right. Circumstances happen. Injuries come. Plans need to change. That's a part of great coaches learn to navigate that. So if this is the only week you can get him and you've got a plan and that was always the plan and you're going to stick to that plan and there's nothing else you can do other than that move, cool. Back that sucker in. That's the most important thing. Have a plan. Have a narrative about why you're making that plan, as Ben and Jordox have both said, and you've seen, map out the logic of why you're getting them now, what the risks are, what the benefits are. And then once you've done that, don't put any more further work into it. Just pull the trigger and make the trade, because otherwise you'll live and die in doubt land. And great coaches don't doubt themselves. They map it all out.
So final bit on those three.
Sure.
If you are someone, you're a coach who wants both Neil and Dangerfield, and you're worried you won't be able to squeeze them in the following weeks, and you had to pick one this week based on everything we said on the matchups and fitness and where you think they're at, Ben, who would you take this week, Dangerfield or Neil?
Out of those two, I would I'd take Neil, but I wouldn't be happy about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Neil's got the ability to be the number one scoring player in the game from now to the end of the year across the formats.
Yeah.
He's got that ability. Dangerfield could be the number one scoring forward from now to the end of the year. Someone has to be. But at the price you're paying for Neil, if he can match a McRae, he can match an Oliver, he can match a Steele. At the price you're paying for Dangerfield at this point, you've got a guy like a Shai Bolton, who we haven't mentioned yet, who's going at a 90 for the past 8 weeks, a 95 over the past 8 weeks. You've got so many great options coming through. You might even decide you stuff it in the last fortnight of the year. You're jumping back on the Josh Dunkley train. That might be one of your save trades from now to the end of the year. So as great as he is,
isn't he?
He's still towards the top of the pricey tree. Neil's crazy value. I'm with Ben across the formats. It's a great question, Jordox. I'd be on Neil, but I'd begrudgingly cry under my breath and hope like anything that Mark O'Connor just decides to have some form of empathy and compassion for him.
Neil will teach him a lesson tomorrow.
All right. Well, I look forward to seeing that, how it all plays out. All right, lads, let's get into some of our Patreon questions that have landed through. Of course, if you want to join that Patreon supporter group, get access to a bunch of different podcasts, articles, cash leagues you can get involved with, some secret conversational groups. All the links for that are at coachespanel.tv. I am going to throw some questions out to you, lads, and all you got to tell me is what your thoughts are on these players. All right, let's go straight into it. Benny, I feel like we've kind of answered this question, but I'm going to give you some low-hanging fruit to start with. In SuperCoach, Neil or Lions, who's 35K cheaper?
I think I like the Lockie Neal out of those two, MJ.
Yep, fair enough too. I don't mind that. I'm a fan of that. All right, AFL fantasy question for you, Jordox, from Tom. We're going to give you some time to think about that format for a second. Here's his scenario. He's currently ranked 51 overall. Just so you know, Jordox is doing quite nicely in that format too. So Tom, beware. He may try to sabotage you at this point. No, that's not our style.
Not at all.
Not our style. All right. And Ben, you might want to jump off the back of this too. We'll see how we go. Are there any aggressive strategies or some unique acquisitions that could give him a crack at the top 10? Sorry, I've just got a frog in my throat. Sorry. Eddie for us there, Jordox?
Look, in terms of strategy, and well done, Tom. That's incredible. I could only hope to get that close to the top, but I think what you're in a position to do, and it actually kind of depends how much time you got up your sleeve, Tom, and maybe take a week off work or something. Have a look, if you can, at maybe not all 50 of the teams ahead of you, but maybe pick the top 20.
Yeah, nice.
And just have a look at those teams and try and find someone that's not there that you like. And I'll give you a hint. Well, I won't give you a hint. I'll just tell you one that's not in many of those teams. Dane Zorko. It doesn't appear in a lot of those top sides. It sounds like a strange one, but I think a lot of that's probably more because he's had the 2 weeks off, and a lot of coaches would have jumped off.
Sure.
Because he had the bye and suspension. But have a look at him, because I think a lot of the top coaches and smart coaches this week will target Pendlebury. Mm-hmm. We'll still be looking at the Toby Green, and Zorko's quite highly priced, but he's been fantastic. We talked about Brisbane's run home. I'm not concerned about Neil being back in the squad, what effect that'll have on his midfield minutes, because Zorko, he zips all over the ground. He kicks goals. He lays tackles. He's a star. So, look, that's just a name, but in terms of strategy, have a good look at some of those top teams and just try and pick a few players who aren't prevalent, who you think are going to be good in the run home. And then, how much time you got, Tom? Look at the 55s behind you. You could play defense and try and pick up some of those guys. But, yeah, there's some thoughts. Good luck, Tom.
Yeah, it's a good call. There's around about 700 points rounding it up between who's ranked at 50 and who's ranked first. So you're going to aim, mate, to try to make up 100 points a week. I think anything aiming more than that, in AFL fantasy, it's the hardest format to make up ground because everyone's got the same amount of available trades. At least in DreamTeam and SuperCoach, you've got the variable of out of trades, out of depth, and you can make up moves like Ben talked about at the top of the episode. So you need to aim for 100 points a week to try to make up. And I think, Jordox, good advice, man. Focus on that top 50, who's unique to that 50, and go for it. Get aggressive. Absolutely go for it. You're only in a position to win a format once. You're a little bit off. You'd probably want to be within 500 points or 300 points. but it's achievable from there with some luck to go your way. So
Long
get
way to
aggressive
go.
and go. Yeah, get aggressive and go.
Two words I'll say as well, creative captaincy.
Yeah, good shout. Yeah, don't follow the crowd. Back it in. Like someone like a Taranto in AFL Fantasy is getting no captaincy love most weeks. And yet you look at what the guy, he probably will this week, absolutely, because of recency bias. But for me, like a Jack Steele's a banging vice captaincy option this week against a Richmond, because with 2 exceptions since round 2, he's turned up every single week. And when he turns up, these are his last 5 tons in AFL Fantasy. 133, 137, 118, 117, 136. So when he tons, he tons. And so don't just feel it's got to be a Gawn, McRae, Merritt. And there
this could be a good week.
With an Aaron Hall type as well.
Yeah, so Aaron Hall, I like that.
Gold Coast is a Saturday afternoon fixture. I mean, yeah, there's always options, and the reality is it's so rare that the majority or the wisdom of the crowd is right to getting the first player of the week, getting that top scorer. So have a bit of fun. It's a good way to pick up another 20 points. It's very risky. And I think, MJ, you nailed the number one question on the top of my head when I hear a question like that is, are you playing to win it all, or are you playing for the best rank? If you're playing for the best rank, it's a different strategy. You do follow the crowd. You think, okay, I'm very confident in this scenario, but mate, play to win. This only happens every so often. It's a big gap to catch up. So you've got to be getting adventurous. But mate, you've done really well up until this point. Trust the intuition. You might be able to get to the top.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really good call, man. I like that one. Benny, while we're with you, we'll stay with Brendan's got a dream team question. He wants to lay out his forward dilemma to you. Current forward line is this: Dusty, Zorko, Zeeble, Hall, Langford, and Phillips. But he's considering moving Phillips on with the intention of getting Neil next week as his last premium. 3 trades left after finishing his team. So that's once he maps that out. Who's the best options out of Bolton, Sidebottom, Dangerfield, and Green? There's more to the question, but that can start to load the dice a bit. Who's the best forward for him left to get? Bolton, Sidebottom, Dangerfield, and Green.
Oh, I'd probably say Green personally, but I actually think 3 trades is too short, MJ.
Yeah, I think you're shallow.
So I would be questioning, okay, if we can get a Toby Green in, and I know a lot of people would say Dangerfield's the man.
Sure.
We're talking about maybe a 15 to 20 point upgrade, which is really 1 or 2 zeros or donuts that you're dealing with towards the end of the season. I just don't think it's the right play. I think 3 trades is cutting it too fine. Yep. Now, we were just talking about risk aversion and going all out for it.
Yep.
Obviously, AF's a little bit different with the unlimited trades, but I'm actually quite a risk taker.
You are.
But I think 4 trades is cutting it really fine. 3 just makes me feel uneasy. So I would say, look, maybe hold on to a Phillips if you really can't stomach it. Sometimes it's a good one to learn the lessons. So maybe go out and make the trade.
Yeah.
And then, if like what I see as being predictable is 3 trades is going to be too few. Yep. See what happens for the rest of the season. Like, it's painful going through those last 3 or 4 rounds where you don't have a trade and you're copying zeros on the field, and that will live with you for a long time. And you'll never forget that. So sometimes it's a mistake that's a good one to make.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good shout, man. I quite like that. Chris has a question. Let me answer it for you, Chris, very, very quickly. You are torn between upgrading Harms to an Uber or getting your last rookie off your field and getting in Pendles. I think I know the better play, but interested in your point. He's inside the top 100. Here's the play, mate. Yeah, get the cows off the field. There are about 10 fantasy footy 101s. One of them is buy low, sell high. Sure. Another of them is get the cow off your ground. Those that were playing Newcombe last week by design, not just to get to 18, but by design, learnt that out. Those that played Bianco on field the week before by design, learnt that the hard way. Amity's been good, mate. And I don't see a reason why he's not going to be good. But he's a 2-game AFL player. If the option is to get him onto my field or a Pendles, yeah, you're taking the premium. So good luck with that. All right, here we go. Sarah has a question for you, Jordox, an AFL fantasy one. She's trying to decide between the following trades. In, Gawn, and Rao. Rao would be the closest thing she has to an upgrade to go. Or in, Max, and Amity. Amity would need to probably be on the field. What are you thinking there, man? It's Gawn either way, or it's Amity with a bit of cash, or do you take a bit of value or potential value in Rao?
Yeah, I thought that there'd be an obvious answer there. Go the cash grab, but geez, Rao could turn it. I know he's struggled, and it's going to be a slow burn.
Yeah.
That's a tricky one.
Bank the cash and run, Sarah, would be my answer. And if Rao turns, he'll still be worth getting next week. Amity won't be worth getting next week at that break even. So take the cash.
Sorry, mate, but it's too soon for Rao right now.
Yeah. He's shown moments in a game. He like a couple of touches where you go, oh, I remember this, but he's done nothing more than moments. And to get him in,
it's 200K.
You need more than moments.
He's played 8 games, hasn't he?
And 2 of them have been basically injured from the start.
Yeah.
So 6 full games of footy, basically.
Yeah. And I'm one of his, we're all big fans of Rao. I love him to death. But
he's a jet.
I think we can cool a little bit off on him next for now. And I think if he gets a great preseason in, I think 2022 is the year for Matty Rao. But I could be wrong. It might turn it around very quickly, but I think, he's just missed so much football now that it was a good year and a half he missed of footy. He's a freak, but he's not a robot. So I think we just better slow down with him.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Round 1 next year, we'll have him.
He will be, I'm calling it now, he will be the most popular selection of 2022.
He would have been this year, wasn't he? And last year.
He was pretty close to it this year, to be fair. He was value in most of the formats. It's going to be increasingly, with the injuries he's had, he just needs confidence in a preseason, and he'll get that. If he can get an injury-free preseason, which he has not yet had, first-year players in an AFL system get babied into the league. And I don't care if you're Matt Rao or Sam Walsh, you get babied into a preseason. His second preseason, quote unquote, was coming back from that injury and was working his way through. If he can get through the back end of this year and actually get a preseason, every man and his dog will be all over him. So nice, Sarah, maybe in a week or 2, but for me, not just yet. Fellow panelist Johnny Coombs has a question. I want to give you this one, Benny. SuperCoach question specific, but certainly could be opened up across the formats. I'll paraphrase him. What the heck do we do with Heaney? No, what he's really asking, is there a case for holding Isaac Heaney? You've held him through the bye, maybe, but is there a case for holding Isaac in SuperCoach, Ben?
Trades, MJ. How many have you got left?
That's the variable, isn't it?
Yeah. Heaney's it's been an injury liability. We all know when he is 100% with his body, he's a phenomenal footballer, and he will continue to be so. But I think week to week, as Longmire's told the press on numerous occasions now, Isaac's struggling to get up. It's a proposition. I think Sydney's looking fairly strong for finals, but they are still around the mark where they could be taken. So they are trying to win week to week. So I think, Heaney's as likely to score a 50 as he is to score a 90. Yep. He's a good guy. He's a good guy to trade him out. I would personally be trading him out before Tom Phillips, for example.
Yep.
That's sort of where I see it, but it comes down to trades. If you got 4 trades left, you're going to be holding Isaac Heaney.
He's F6. Yeah. That's a really good call.
Yeah.
I think the case for holding him though, if we were to make one, is the bye. He's just had the break.
Bit fresher.
And and you've sort of made your bed. You kind of have to hold on to him now, I think, for a little bit. Unless you're swimming in trades, because he could be the one that could still pop. I mean, he had a couple of quiet ones. He had a couple of big ones. The fixture coming up is pretty nasty. Port Adelaide, West Coast Bulldogs, and the Giants. But the bye will do Heaney and many others the world of good.
I think you've just rolled that fixture out nicely. And you make a good point about the bye. I think if you've held him at this point and you hear that fixture coming up, knowing how much forward time he plays, that's probably enough of a case to go, you know what, even if I've only got 4 trades, I'm probably moving him on. At this point, Jordox just might have moved you on. We've already answered Paul's question a little bit. Paul Erickson wants to know, he's keen on Brad Crouch. You've already heard Jordox's take on that earlier in the episode, but was keen on, do you move on a Poulter or a Giath first? You move on the cow, mate. You absolutely move on the cow. The only reason you don't is if Giath isn't named this week and Poulter is, then change structure and strategy, sure. But away you go. Last question, we'll throw it back to you, Benny, before we look to wrap up this episode. We've kind of covered it, but we want to make sure we specifically help our Patreons out. Is Isaac Cumming scoring well enough at D6 in DT? He's got the cash to upgrade to a Mills or to a Whitfield in a single trade, but that would only leave him with 5 trades left. The rest of his team he's dubbing completed. So it's a little different to some of the others. And now, again, we don't know what that other completed definition is or isn't. But if in one single trade, you can still have 5 trades left and get a Whitfield or Mills, is it worth it from an Isaac Cumming?
No. One word answers, mate. It's that time of night. Let's be honest. No, quite frankly, that's really a really clear one. Isaac Cumming's been fantastic for the last 3, 4, 5 weeks. He's been fantastic for the season.
For the year, to be fair, yeah.
The upgrades, we've really got to be looking at it as we have 8-7 weeks to play. What are we up to right now? Around
9 to go.
9 weeks ago. If we're getting 15 points a week, that's 135 points we're getting for the season. That's not enough for one upgrade. We need to be treating the trades like gold right now. So I'm well into hold on to Isaac Cumming, hold the trade back. And next week or the week after, if we go sort of a few more rounds in, maybe we get to 6 rounds to go, 5 rounds to go, we've got our 4 or 5 trades in, then we can get a little bit more creative with it. If there aren't any LTIs, I suspect there's going to be a few LTIs, but he's an absolute no-brainer for me to hold, because I think Isaac Cummings has been fantastic, and the upgrade just does not provide the value.
Yeah, Jordox?
Yeah, it's a good point. And the question you'd want to ask, I'd love to know from Craig, is when you say the rest of the team is completed, I'd love to know, do you have a Harms? Do you have a Markov? Surely there's got to be someone else, because I think if you can get to a Mills or a Whitfield, you would. But look, the thing with Cumming as well, his recent scores have been really nice. So his break-even's low, so you can just wait. Even if Whitfield goes up, Cumming's going to go up, same price. Same with Mills. Lockie Ash was out last week.
He was?
If he comes back in, does Cumming have the same scoring? That'd be the thing to watch, but there's no need to do it this week.
Yeah, he's gone 119, 89, and 113 in his last 3. So it's certainly 3 of his best weeks, but that's as good as anywhere else. My encouragement, Craig, would be deepen your bench, if nothing else. Deepen your pool. If that trade's burning in your pocket, can you use a single trade to get a Lockie Neal in and push your M8 up and across? Can you do that single trade to deepen your squad? Maybe that's going to be of more benefit, or you could just hold and wait. But I'm with Benny. I don't think
it's not a bad. It's not a bad trade. It's just don't do it now. Just wait and see.
Yeah.
How good is he going if Isaac Cummings the worst player on his 22?
I know.
It's Craig. For those that have been a part of our Patreon community and long-term dream teamers, when you see the name Craig Keel, you're like, oh, not again. And it's generally towards the top of a ranking. So yeah, you're going okay when you're looking at a bloke that's got a last three average in Isaac Cumming, where you're going, oh, what's your last three? Oh, 107. Yeah, that's my worst. You're going okay, Craig. You're going okay, mate.
Hats off to Craig then. Well done, mate.
Well done to him, mate. All right, that's going to wrap up this episode. Jordox, a pleasure, mate. Thanks for your work on this episode.
Good stuff, boys.
And Ben, mate, always full of wisdom for us. Thank you.
Thanks, MJ. Thanks, Jordox.
If you want to go back and check out any of the other podcasts we've dropped, honestly, why would you? Because they're dated now, but you can. They are available for you. Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Do make sure you leave a 5-star rating and a review. It helps others find what you already know about the Coaches Panel. There's articles dropping pretty much every day where there isn't a game of footy on at coachespanel.tv. Always some wisdom from the panel, whether you play salary cap formats, drafts, whatever it is, there's something in there for you. Next week, there's an extra podcast coming for everybody. Why? Because it's the round 15 final DPP editions for Ultimate Footy. So you'll get to hear the dulcet tones of Jimmy. Plenty of draft news landing at coachespanel.tv. And of course, always some secret and exclusive stuff for our Patreons. All the links are at coachespanel.tv. Footy starts Thursday. Make sure you keep an eye on your rolling lockouts. The fixture times have adjusted a little bit too. So go and check out your fixtures for all the details about that. But until we chat to you next week, good luck. And from all of us here at the Coaches Panel, we'll talk to you soon.